Thank you, Sasha, for that very insightful presentation. I'm sure the audience had a lot to take away from that. Next up, we have our second fireside chat for the day, where we address a posing question. We know of CMOs being CEOs later on, but can CXOs being the next CEOs? For this session, please give it up for Aloki Batra, Chief Executive Officer, 5 Hotels and Resorts. Aloki is a leading tour de force on the hospitality landscape in the region in his role as CEO for 5 Hospitality of the famed 5 Hotel and Resorts. His ethos encompasses a finely honed ecosystem of high-quality property hardware merged with cutting-edge experiential software which enables brands to drive record-breaking results by way of homegrown IPs that have now traveled to Europe with 5's international outpost, that is 5 Zurich. A key player in creating a unique, highly successful, world-renowned brand identity, he was recently recognized by the Forbes Middle East as one of the top 100 CEOs on their much-coveted annual list for 2022. Can we please have you on stage, Aloki? To moderate this session, I would like to welcome again on stage Ravi Raman, Editorial Director for Martechvibe. Please give it up for him as well. Over to you, Ravi.
So now you guys know how this fireside chat works. All right, so for so many years, I think the CEO's role has been up for grabs, and we've had several contenders. I remember around 5 years back, we had the Chief Data Officer, who was supposed to be the next CEO. Then we saw Chief Storyteller. Then we had the Chief Growth Officer. So the now next new kid in the block is the Chief Experience Officer. So how many of you think the Chief Experience Officer is going to be the next CEO? Show of hands. Nobody? Well, that's pretty disappointing. Well, we have a CEO who's going to tell us whether the Chief Experience Officer can be the next CEO. Aloki, thank you so much for joining the panel. So that's my first question. Tell us, what does it take to, first of all, lead a CX team?
Well, thank you, Ravi, for having me here. Well, let's answer the question first. Can CXOs be the next CEO? So what's a CEO's job in a well-run organization which the CEO has set up or has inherited? The job is to create growth. The job is to understand the customer. And the job is to finally translate that into revenue. So I always believe in any B2C company, the job of a CEO is to understand the customer perfectly well. And can a CXO be the next CEO? I definitely believe so, yes. Because if you are focused on experience all the time, and if you excelled in creating that experience for the customer, which is translated finally into revenue growth, or customer loyalty, or whatever the mission of that experience officer is, you would get a fairly good understanding of how the business is run and how that impact on that customer experience impact on the business. So yes, it's possible, but there's a lot more.
All right, so he seems to be much more positive about this room seeing more CEOs. Tell me, Aloki, what are the critical aspects that a Chief Experience Officer often misses out when he looks at a transition into a CEO's role? What are the key critical learnings that need to be added onto his skill set?
Well, I think so. CEO is a leadership role, and an experience officer typically would always look at customer experience, but a large part of the CEO's role is people management. And that's something which any experience officer who wants to move to the next level, I would say, has to start focusing on psychology, people management, HR management, and of course, strategy, growth strategy. So these are, but again, you already have what I would call the basics in place if you're a good chief experience officer. Then you just have to translate that level to within organization and outside the organization.
I always feel that chief experience officers or CX professionals always look at the customer outcomes, but they don't necessarily match that with the business outcome. They feel that, okay, the customer experience is the be-all and end-all, but they have to also dial back and see whether it makes business sense. So how do they get that understanding?
Well, I think that comes through your communication. It comes through your strategy meetings. It comes through your budgeting to explain, yes, because in every business in life, there's always there's always a budget. You could spend on advertising, you could spend on customer experience, but at the end you have to work strictly with budgets. But definitely with what's happening, at least what I've seen in the last 10, 15 years, like simple, something like Amazon, they improve the customer experience through very simple, I mean, it's probably the ugliest e-commerce website, but it's just the best experience to work on. And I mean, so it doesn't always necessarily have to be spending much more. It's sometimes experience can just be going back to simple logic and simple understanding of what exactly is that customer looking for and how can I deliver that at the least possible expense. I mean,
So is that what you tell your CX team, that it's not about spending money, it's about outcomes?
well, I would tell them first explain to me, go through every possible outcome and explain to me why this works at this price and why this can't work at this price. And then you need to find the balance.
Okay, let me open this to the audience here. How many of you feel that explaining the customer experience journey to a CEO is challenging? And how do you really counter that challenge? And I'm going to come back to you, Aloki, on that. Anyone has any comment or question on that? So all of them feel either that it's not challenging or all of them are too shy to talk about it. So what's the biggest challenge that you face when a CX professional comes to you and says that, look, Aloki, I need to spend $1 million on this. These are the outcomes, but I can't tell you whether this outcome is going to happen in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years. How do you counter that? And how do you buy into that logic?
Well, it depends. So if it's something to do with, which is key for brand building, then you look at it you put that in a different box, and you say, okay, say this costs $1 million. Am I amortizing that over the next 3 years because that's building brand? This experience is towards the brand, and it's for the future, obviously, because that's possibly the next trend 2 years from now, but we need to get into it now. But if it's more a short-term strategy, then no way. When there's no justification, the only justification is for strategy, brand growth.
No, the $1 million was just a figure. It could have been $100,000.
Or $100,000, whatever the figure is. If there is no clear, demonstrable advantage on a 3 to 6 month horizon, then it has to be on a long-term horizon. It has to sit on a brand.
So that's what I want to understand. So as a CEO, do you look at immediate gains from a customer experience perspective, or are you there for the long haul? Are you saying that, okay, fine, I'm willing to wait for the next year or so to see what this brings us from a brand perspective and a customer experience perspective?
I like a more waiting strategy because I feel there's a lot happening in technology. There's a lot happening in the data space. And, sometimes when you go in a certain route, there's a commitment which you've made. And then there could be other options which come up. And so you end up burning a lot more. Again, I always say technology is an enabler. It's a tool. So the most important is to make your flow chart, understand on a piece of paper what exactly that customer experience you want to deliver is. And then understand what technologies are available to enable that to happen in your organization and what's coming in the future. So you need to be very, very clear, but until you don't have what I would call a blueprint in your hand, and I take a pen and paper and and just you just draw it out, and then you say, okay, this is what I need for this is what I need. Oh, that's coming next, so maybe we don't make that investment. Maybe we do a SaaS model on this, which have software as a subscription service. So that's the way I would approach it, and I think that's always the most logical way to approach it. Finally, the customer is a human being. He's got thoughts, he's got all the attributes of a human personality.
So as publishers, we often feel and we honestly believe that customer experience is all about storytelling. It's about having a strong brand story and making sure that your customers experience that on a day-to-day basis on every engagement. So how do you align your brand story? First of all, you have a fascinating brand story. So I would like to hear that first. And then how do you translate that into a customer experience journey?
Well, I mean, it starts first with making sure you have you need to map out, like, again, your customer journey and making sure you have all that, for lack of a better word, taped up. And then you need to communicate that in your marketing. So it starts with your marketing, but your marketing is your brand promise. So first, it's very important to get the product out clear, where the touch points are, where the customer journey, what are the potential customer journeys which are going to happen, how are we mapping that out, how are we adding our touch points and experience, how are we bringing our brand out in the touch point experience, what is our differentiation to our competition during that journey, and then obviously your marketing needs to translate that, and then you have what I call subliminal marketing, where you sort of explain to the customer what their journey and experience is going to be at a 5, for example. And so what you see is what you get, and that is invaluable from a customer experience point of view.
And then coming to what you said about 5, hospitality is a very complicated and I think emotional business. You are actually selling emotions to your customers. It's not just about rooms and it's not just about F&B. How do you make your customer experience distinctive? And what's the kind of value proposition that you sell internally and make sure that your team is buying into that overall vision?
I think sometimes, especially in luxury or where there's feelings involved, it's very important to have that intuitive approach, and the intuitive approach can easily be addressed with softwares which are out there. So I always say, all I need is for you to come and stay once, and after that we know you, and it doesn't matter who's going to serve you next, who's going to be who's going to be in the restaurant serving you, who's going to take you to your room. We already have mapped out what kind of holiday Ravi likes, what kind of food, what kind of beverages, what kind of venues. And so it's very, very easy when you have the right systems in place and the right softwares which all exist, and obviously the data needs to be mined, but it finally gets down to the level of the person serving you to actually go through that, and we try to make it very simple with a few points. And I think from a hospitality point of view, if I know Ravi is allergic to, say, peanuts, and Ravi likes his breakfast in a certain way and a certain kind of beverage, so I think that really gives you that feeling that they care. And when you feel that they care, that's your emotional hospitality emotional bit, which is
great. By the way, I'm not allergic to peanuts, but the point is, and that's a very relevant point that you said, I look at it from a PPS point of view. It's proactive, predictive, and seamless. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of model that most of the brands would look at. And how do you see your brand aligning with these 3 main buckets? How are you looking at being proactive? How do you really predict? And how do you make it seamless for your customers?
See, the predictability comes with our own data, how we mine our data, how we look at our data. The seamlessness is, of course, it's if you can manage to look at that data and give that experience, it will be seamless. The proactivity, I'm a little concerned about going ahead, because I think my email is bombed every day. There's a lot of people out there saying this experience. Experience seems to be the buzzword of this decade. Everyone talks about experience. I see experience in every ad. Everything is experience. But it's. So I definitely think we need to start caring about that part of the customer. Not we have to send you 20 emails for you to show up. No. So we've made it very clear over the last 2-3 years. I said, we send a festive email out. So we very, very clear on our database management. We like our customer to reach out, and then we send them so it's more not like a carpet bombing strategy, it's more a reactive strategy. And so the minute the customer sort of calls us or reaches out to us, then we're clear how we give them the options. Maybe it's a holiday, maybe it's a room, and that part, and that needs to be very precise, not exhaustive, and tailored to what they want.
Got it.
So if someone wants to come and stay in our beach hotel, then we're not going to be offering, then they want to stay at a 5 in a room, we're not going to be offering our other hotel. So, so on and so forth.
So as a CEO, you essentially own the brand story and the brand experience or customer experience. But how are you able to empower your CX team to really innovate and try out new things?
Well, because we run a 365-day business, so it's very, very difficult for us to, step out of that box, especially coming out of Corona with tight budgets, etc. But what I've done this year is we managed to get, just to what I would call an audit and a strategy way forward. We got a consultant who's got very, very high degree of experience with e-shopping. Help build a couple of the top e-commerce websites in the region, successful ones. And I believe that's the most competitive, it's not Amazon, but he's built comparable to the Amazon here. So I thought that's a good way for us in the hotel business. We would never reach that level of competition on a digital domain, on a customer experience domain digitally. So on our digital data mining customer, how we reach out to our customers digitally, how do they experience Five digitally? Because we have our touch points or physical touch points very well taped off, and that's the hospitality business, which has been going on for 100 years or more. But as far as the digital experience is concerned, this is I would say my 2023 vision is, how do I give, I said experience again, how do I give the digital customer journey, how does that embody what we do physically in our hotels, and how can I be different from my competition, and how can I make it actually a pleasure to navigate through our websites or our emails or our Instagrams or whatever medium of communication digitally we are communicating with.
How many people in the audience from the hospitality or the luxury industry? Show of hands? Oh, you don't count. All right, so I just wanted to check whether there are some commonalities that we could discuss. But yeah, moving on. Coming back to the original question, can the CXO be the next CEO? Imagine that you're interviewing your next candidate, your replacement. You're going to be sacked very soon. All right, so we are giving you the option of interviewing your next replacement. Tell me 3 questions that you would ask CXO to decide whether he can take over from your role.
I think the first question is, are you a leader? Are you a leader?
Okay.
Finally, that's the most important. Leadership comes with its own challenges. Sometimes you feel you have all the responsibility, and there are people working under you who are not getting paid so much less, but they go home smiling and you go home stressed. So, but is that a stress you enjoy? Leadership needs to be enjoyed. I think that's the most important. You need to revel in it. You need to enjoy that excitement, and you need to then, impart that onto your management team and grow them. And so that's the first thing.
Okay.
Of course, understanding in terms of it's invaluable for a CEO to be a top quality CXO, because that's finally, if you're in the B2C business, that's where the rubber hits the road, right? So it's very important. And I think the third factor, obviously, with going ahead, I believe, at least when I see or interview people kids just out of university now, it's very, this digital revolution, I'm finding the new, or the young, executives out there, they're a lot more free thinking. I'm 46 years old than I was 25 years ago when I came out of college. So I think managing expectations, managing, a very, what I would say, free thinking, a group of young individuals is going to be the next 10 years is going to be the large challenge. And that's why people are talking a lot about HR, human capital? How are we harnessing our human capital? I think that if a CXO can manage to achieve that, I think then, you understand the customer, you are a leader, and you know how to manage your people.
Would you say working across silos and having a very strong focus on the bottom line would also be critical factors, or they're not that important, it comes over time?
I think to become CEO, you have to have a bottom line mindset already. I mean, there's no way you can reach that level if you don't understand the bottom line of every decision you're making. And that sort of becomes a sixth sense, so to speak, and they're good leaders and they're, average leaders. So today, when I'm making a decision, if something is presented to me, I'm already calculating what my impact is. Then I vet it and verify it. But yes, you can't, the shareholders, you'll be sacked before you can start your customer experience changes if you don't understand your bottom line.
Got that. So with that, we have about 30 seconds for a question. I don't want you to be clapping for 30 seconds, so let's have one question. Anyone in the audience has a comment, question, suggestion? Are you all convinced that you can be the next CEO? They're still not convinced. I'm surprised.
I don't think anyone wants to. They've heard me and they're like, forget it.
Well, we are confident that the CXO has to be the next CEO, definitely, because the whole idea of this summit is that someone who understands, cares for their customers, deserves the top seat. So with that, thank you so much, Aloki.
Thank you,
Thank
Ravi.
you so much.